Thank you for having me at this conference. So I will present a talk which is about hacking IoT devices and how does it escalate to a worldwide scale. So about me, so thanks for the kind introduction. My work is I am a principal security specialist and trainer at Riscure. And at our company, since 17 years ago, we do a lot of work on embedded security in a lot of different fields, so hardware and software. And this is in the fields of automotive or hardware security devices, hardware security modules, your banking cards, passports, everything that is embedded security, we do all in software and hardware. And today I would like to start with a couple stories about IoT security or in security. So let's see. Nowadays, 2018, we live in the world of IoT. Okay, so now if you have your coffee machine and the coffee machine stops following you in Twitter, that can happen. Because nowadays we have internet-connected coffee machines, you have internet-connected toothbrush, you have your car is connected to the internet, everything is connected to the internet. 2017, there was a survey, there is more than 8.4 billion devices connected to the internet daily. For 2018, this is expected to be more than 16, so doubling. For 2020, it's going to be more than 30 billion. So this is rising exponentially. Okay, so we live in the world of IoT, and now, what is this thing? It's a fish tank, right? Of course, now 2018, in the world of IoT, you don't get just a fish tank, you can also get an IoT-connected fish tank that can tell you what is the temperature, what is the happiness of the fish, it can tell you if you need to clean it. Of course, this thing will come with some internet-connected app, so then you will have to do something about it. And how does this thing look towards security? So when you program these things, then a programmer thinks this is how you should use a fish tank, or this is how you fish. But hackers, when they start doing these things, they start different thinking. They start saying, oh, can I do something else? And when hackers start looking at this internet-connected stuff, then these things happen in the news. For example, this is a real story. I'm not making this up. So by hacking an internet-connected thermometer in a fish tank, some attackers could actually take a database from a casino. So basically, they compromised the fish tank. This fish tank was connected to the internal network. So they used this IoT thermometer as a stepping stone. They escalated to the internal network, and then they broke the whole database. So this happened. Hacking an internet thermometer, you get the database of a casino. But what else? So what is this thing? A light bulb, right? In the world of IoT nowadays, of course, you can get an internet-connected light bulb. Okay, so now it comes with internet connection, it comes with an app, you can set up the lights from home, you can set different colors, you can set it from your mom's house. Great. So what happens with this thing? This is another real case that happened. This is called the Philips Hue lighting system. And these lights actually use proper security. They use AES, they use strong crypto, they used encrypted firmwares, and they did quite some stuff. So it is not trivial to break this thing. Yet people, they took these devices and they mounted what is called a side channel attack. Later I will explain what it is. But they found out that these devices, even though with proper security, they have a security issue, which is they share all the same master key. And if you have the same crypto key for everything, you compromise one device, and then suddenly you can escalate to all devices that use the same crypto. Okay? So these authors, actually, I have a video here. What they did is they hooked up to a drone, a Raspberry Pi-like thing, and what they had loaded in this Raspberry Pi is a firmware that was malicious, and of course, it uses the right crypto key. So this is a video what was recorded in Israel. So they are flying this drone with this IoT device, and this IoT device is looking for internet-connected lamps. If it finds internet-connected lamps, then it will start reprogramming them, and it will start loading this malicious firmware. So as you can see here, there are some lights there, and now the lights, they are blinking in this SOS pattern. Okay, so now they are reprogrammed, and now, in this case, just to show this is a proof of concept, they are blinking in this SOS. I hope that there was nobody just go in there and see what happens, but yeah, you can now program IoT connected lights. So there was one device that had not that much security, another one that had still security, but it was broken. So why does security go wrong in these IoT devices? What is happening here? So what is in these devices? It's always typically the same. IoT devices, if we take an X-ray of these devices, what they will have is a chip. This chip is typically called a general purpose microcontroller, and these chips are very cheap. They are less than $5 typically, but they do a ton of stuff. They will do Bluetooth, they will do Wi-Fi, they will do ZigBee, memory, RAM, CPU, whatnot. And these things, they have a lot of sensors. You can sense temperature, you can talk to the fridge, you can talk to anything. And you can even get, for less than $20, a fully packaged developer kit. So as a security analyst, the first thing I think is, well, you've given me a lot of stuff and you're asking me a lot of money, so there should be some trade-off, right? And indeed, unfortunately, there is a trade-off. So these devices, these general purpose microcontrollers, they all fail against hardware or physical attacks. And this is something that it's for all general microcontrollers, general purpose microcontrollers. So this, for example, was a picture of me. This was in 2015. I was using a camera flash, the same as the ones there. I was taking a picture of a chip, and just by this camera flash, I was breaking RSA signatures. Okay, so with a camera flash, I would just crack the security. That's one of the lowest cost attacks I've ever shown. And this is not something new. So this is actually known by manufacturers. If you look at the chip vendors, they know, and they say, yeah, I have my security line of microcontrollers. If you want actual security against hardware attacks, buy the security line. Okay, so this is not news for them. But yeah, so what is the issue now? Why security gets broken? It's because this is a challenge. If you want to put sound security, it's not free. It costs something. For example, if you want secure microcontrollers, you have to pay more money. If you want to put secure development process, then you have to take more time. If you want to put some security protocols, then it uses power. So there is always some price to pay. And this falls back in what I call the IoT doom pattern. Okay? In the IoT domain, there is always typically this combination which is lethal. You have time pressure, things need to be done yesterday, plus you are very limited in budget, so these things are extremely cheap. You cannot do very high expensive stuff. Plus, you can make trade-offs in design. There is no standard on how IoT things should work. So some designs do something, some other designs do some other thing. Because you can choose, then you can often choose the easiest thing, which might not be the most secure. If we put it in a picture, I can picture it like this. So we have developers for IoT that they want to make things to work, and now. And you might have a security team that keeps these developers in check, like this is not something very secure. And then if you start putting the realistic scenario, then what happens if you start having time pressure? You start pulling, hey, let's make something. Let's try to not do it secure, but let's do something now. And of course, you have limited budget, so you don't have that many security engineers, you have less. And it's not only that you have less security engineers, it's that we have to make it to work. So we have 4 people. Okay, instead of doing security, now you're going to make it to work. So then you start pulling in the other direction. Okay, in the end, it's a real challenge. It's really hard to get security because there are many constraints. So, given this issue that it's hard to put security, now, how fast, if we do attacks, how fast an attack can escalate in IoT devices? If we have hardware attacks, I will show in some seconds, that general purpose microcontrollers are vulnerable to these attacks. They are all broken by these things. And what hardware attacks do is they reveal secrets or information about a device. So imagine I do a hardware attack. What if I find information that affects all devices? What happens if I find something that is in my device but in all the same devices? And moreover, what happens if I find information that I can exploit remotely? We have internet-connected things, so what if I can't connect to it? If I have a yes to both answers, then the attack scales very, very fast. Why? Is because I have the internet, the cloud, and then I have one device, I do an attack, it's compromised. How to escalate this thing? It's just repeat forever. I have the cloud, I have many devices, so I have one device, same attack, one device, same attack, one device, same attack, one device, same attack. I just need to find them, repeat, everything is doomed. So, in this scenario, what happens when you escalate hardware attacks on generic embedded systems? It's always the same process. You first do some hardware attack, like reverse engineering of the PCB, finding interfaces. You can go sophisticated, like side channel attacks, or SEA, or fault injection attacks, or FI. Once you find something, some information, then the next step is, can you find a remote way to exploit this flaw that you find with a hardware attack? And if you can find a remote way, then okay, this could be working. Now the last step is, can I actually do this exploit? Can I do this over the internet? This is for generic embedded systems. For IoT, it's exactly the same, but with a handicap for IoT devices, which is IoT devices, it's already known that hardware attacks are their Achilles heel. They are broken by this. So very high chances we will find something. For finding remote ways, well, I of IoT stands for internet. So these things are connected to internet. And for remote exploitation, we have this IoT doom pattern. There might be bad security practices. So finding remote ways, it's typically quite doable. So in order to explain this in real life, I have here several devices on the stage. So first I'm going to explain with one device, which is an IoT camera. So this IoT camera is a thing I bought from China. Okay? It's 17 euros, or it's around 1,500 rupee. It's super cheap. But it does a lot of stuff. So it has Wi-Fi connection, it has two-way audio, so you can listen, but you can also talk to this thing. It has HD image, it has motor, so it can rotate. It has infrared light for night image. It's connected to iOS, to Android. This is typically sold in Europe, for example, for monitoring babies. And if I look at these things, 17 euros or 1,500 rupees, and all these things, the first thing I think is something can go wrong. So let's do the attack here. And let's see what happens. So the first step for this hardware attack is, let's open it up and see what's inside. So there is some PCB, some board with some chips. And if I look at this board, then here I have several chips. For example, there is a big chip. That's actually this general purpose microcontroller. In this case, it's called system on chip, but it's the same. Then I have this that green thing, which is a Wi-Fi module. Then I have this big chip, which is for driving motors. Then I have some memory chips. Then I have some interfaces. So these things, you can just Google. Google will tell you exactly what these chips do. There is no rocket science here. And once I have all these things, then what I would like to do is the follows. Most embedded systems, IoT is an embedded system, they will have some sort of serial interface. They will print some debug messages like, I'm on, or this is working. Of course, this camera is also an embedded system, it's an IoT device. So typically, these devices have what is called a UART interface, a serial interface. So in this case, I just took a wire and I started poking out all the holes. And eventually, I found out that there are a couple connectors that are the serial interface. So let's connect to this thing and let's see what happens. Okay. Now I'm going to explain this. I'm going to show in the screen here what's going on. Okay. So what I'm going to show now is I have here the camera. Okay. So in this case, I'm going to open a serial terminal. Okay. Hope you see my screen. Yes. And I'm going to open the serial line. Now here I have, this is the camera. Okay. I have it here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the serial wires. Okay. I just soldered 3 wires so that you can see this. Okay, so this one wire, then here we have another wire. You might see things being printed in the screen, that's normal. And this is another wire. And now I'm going to power up the camera, and let's see what happens. So, of course, it starts printing a lot of stuff. Okay, so it starts printing inflating drivers. This seems to be running some sort of Linux. It starts printing ifconfig and route and Wi-Fi and encoder and whatnot. Okay, I'm going to stop it for a second. So let's see what is in here. Okay, So just by looking at the messages, I can already see that this thing prints something called uboot. So this is an embedded system bootloader. It prints a lot of configuration things. And it already tells me, hey, this system is a Linux system. This thing is a MIPS architecture. So this is a type of CPUs. And it tells me drivers, whatnot. But then this is the moment that it starts getting ugly, because it starts telling me, hey, I'm going to start my configuration, this RTSP port. This is a video interface in this port. This is another video interface in another port. And it will start printing things like, hey, I have a user, and this is this password of this user. I have another user, which is admin, and it has no password. So now I know that, OK, I have admin and no password. But hey, more things. So I have, this is my Wi-Fi connection. And by the way, this is the network password. So you can also connect to this Wi-Fi. OK, great. So it keeps printing more things like this is the IP, this is the network configuration. OK, great. So yeah, interesting thing. So let's try to log into this thing. OK, let's now here, I'm going to see if I can restart this camera. OK, so it starts printing. And this is a Linux system, so let's try to log into this system. Okay? Typically, you have a username which is root. Okay, so this thing, it has this link login, so I will log in as root. This will keep printing debug messages. And password, let's try 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see. It says login incorrect. So let's try another again, like root, password, let's try no password. OK, still says login incorrect. So at least this thing seems to have a password. Now, how can you bypass, for example, if it's not properly configured, this password? So I'm just going to unplug and replug the camera. And you might have noticed that this bootloader says hit any key to stop auto boot. So that's what I did. I stopped the auto boot. And now here, this is the problem. If you don't know how to configure these bootloaders, for example, I can print the environment variables. This is what the system uses to boot. And I can say, OK, this is the parameters for booting. So I'm going to set this variable to the same thing. So to this. But I want you to do something extra. I want that the init process, you also start a shell. OK? Let's do this. And now please boot. So now the system will boot again. But instead of printing all these messages, now I have a different prompt. And if I ask the system, who am I? Well, I am root. And now there is no password. So I can see in the system, oh, what is the password? Well, let's just type it. We go to this configuration folder, and then we list the password file. And yeah, this thing I have here, this is the hash of the root password. And I can see if it's a modern hash. So I can list something called the shadow file. And it says I don't have a shadow file. So this means this password is in a format called MD5 hash. This is ancient. By modern standard, this takes days to crack. Even worse, you can Google this string, and you will find which is the password that matches that hash. It's something called HSA Wi-Fi CAM. OK, so now I have opened this thing. What rest to be done is I will reset the camera. OK, sometimes this camera doesn't really want to boot. So let me just unplug. Let me power off the camera. Now, let's power up the camera. Let's connect the serial line. Okay. One wire. Oops. This is not that easy to do live. But this is just for you to see that there is no trick. So this is another of the wires. And this is another of the wires. So now this starts printing stuff. So now, what is the password? Well, I have root. And the password, I cracked it before, so it's this HSL-Wi-Fi-COM. And now, yeah, I'm in. So now I have the system. This is a live system, and now I can start looking at it. For example, I can see, well, what are the configuration files? Well, let's go to it. So with this thing, it has a system folder. And then let's see what's inside. So here we have these parameters. And here we have the login data. So I can say, OK, tell me all the users of the system. So yeah, I have admin user, and it has no password. This is something I already knew. But OK. I can see what processes are in here. These are all the processes of the system. And there is one process, which is this telnet D. This telnet D is actually a remote shell. So I just found out that this thing, when it connects to the internet, it opens a remote shell access. And now, because of this hardware attack, I also know what is the root password. And this is something that you cannot change in this camera by the user settings. So, oh, bingo. I have a remote shell backdoor on all these cameras. So how do we continue now? Well, now let's do the attack, but remote. So I will unplug the wires. Now, I will start, well, let's connect to this Wi-Fi. I know the password, so let's connect to it. Why not? And now let's start a remote shell. Okay, so this is the IP address of this camera. And yeah, okay. Now, no wires. I'm wireless connected to the same network. And I am root, and the password is this HSL Wi-Fi-COM. I hope I typed it right. Nope. Root HSL Wi-Fi-COM. Nope. The third is the charm. Yeah, the third is the charm. So now, well, I'm in. I have the system. I am root, so I can do now whatever I want. If I want to start a botnet, I just need to find these systems, and then I will install something in this MIPS Linux. But can it get even worse? Well, this thing, it already showed that, for example, it has this RTSP video stream. So, OK, let's try. Let's open it. OK, so, OK. Here, let's play this video stream. It asks for a username and a password. So this is admin and no password. And let's see. OK, seems to be doing something. Not sure. Hey, OK. What's going on here? Yeah. Hey, hello. So, yeah, connected to a camera. In this case, it's this camera that I connected to. But here, now, if you want, you can use search engines. For example, this is one called Showdown. And in this case, I search for the string that is these HTTP headers. So this thing, I can actually search for cameras that show up as the same camera. And then I have 13,000 of these devices, which are already exposed. You can log in with admin and no passwords. Please do not do this thing. It's illegal. So this is just for illustrative purposes that it can be done. But yeah, we have even for countries. So in India, there are 98 cameras exposed at this moment for this thing. So in Vietnam, seems to be a lot of them. Italy, China. So yeah, OK. So now we just need to click and play. And we have remote access to all these things. So to recap this attack, in this case, I had a hardware attack. I just look at the serial port. I got the root password. And I exposed that there is a telnet thing. So I can actually expose all the configuration. And after I do this, I can just search for this type of cameras in a search engine. And then I will just be able to access the video stream and all configuration. So these things also come with a backdoor for free. And these things are just a baby monitor. So these we have now privacy issues, or this has been used actually for Bitcoin miners. So this has been attacked. Or there was a botnet called Mirai that this was used in Europe to take down internet for some days for a DNS thing. So please don't do this full attack because it's illegal, but this is just to explain that it is possible. Takeaways. In this case, bad security practices and a hardware attack means scalability in IoT. So please, if you're an IoT maker, put passwords or do a bit pen testing, but please include hardware attacks. It is trivial to do these attacks nowadays. And if you put this thing in your system, make sure that you have a good firewall. Also, these things are very powerful. So if you have a Linux system and it's compromised, you can use this as a stepping stone, like this casino hack, to start hacking all the systems. And security is not free, so this is going to be a challenge, but it's always useful to go to some evaluation lab or some testing lab, because this is like a doctor. You can choose not to go, but if you don't go to the doctor, then you have to take the consequences. Now, what happens if we have AES or we have more sound security, like these lamps? In a much better world, IoT devices will follow a secure development lifecycle. We would follow security best practices. We would use strong crypto, like AES. We would use passwords and whatnot. Is this still enough? Well, this is a question that actually in my company, Riscure, we had some years ago. So 2 years ago, we have a hardware CTF. And we had this device. This is an Arduino Nano board mimicking an IoT device. We had software exploitation, we had hardware attacks, we had all sorts of attacks. And lots of people tried the software challenges and they broke them, but almost nobody tried the hardware attacks. And this made me sad, because I know that these things are very cheap nowadays, they are very easy. So typical equipment reasons, or typical reasons is, yeah, this is very expensive, or this is only for evaluation labs, or I hate mathematics, I'm allergic to them, this looks like mathematics, I'm not going to try this, or I will burn my device, I don't want to try these things. Well, all these things, they are false nowadays. And I'm going to show it now. I have a setup here. So for this, I will use one of the challenges here, which was as follows. We have this IoT device with no logic flaws. There is no remote shell. There is no logical exploitation. This device does AES encryption. This acts like an encryption device. You send a message, it returns the message encrypted. You have to get the AES key. So just for you to know that I'm going to show this on AES, but there are attacks for any types of crypto. So if you say, yeah, I use ECC, I'm fine. That's a lie. There are also attacks for ECC. Sidechain attacks. Hardware attacks, how do they work? They are very simple. You have to talk to a device or listen to a device. Then, at the same time, you have to measure the power consumption or some side channel. You can also do it with an antenna. Then you feed this data that you listened or the data you sent and the power consumption into a mathematics program, a side channel program. It will compute magic. Okay? It will compute a side channel attack, and you get the crypto key. It is nowadays as simple as that because there is open source software for this thing. Of course, professional tooling is much more powerful, but you can still do this thing on IoT devices. If you want to learn how this works in open source, you have there a web link, so you can actually see this in more detail. But yeah, it's very simple. This is what I'm going to do now. We have this IoT device, so I'm going to first talk to it. Then I'm going to measure power with a resistor. And then I will feed all this data. Happens. Okay. So now let's do a demo. Okay. So here I have the setup. So maybe I can actually even show the setup because I have this hacked camera. So yeah, let's abuse it. So because I have this camera, then you will be able to see what's going on. And here. Okay, let's see. Yep. Hey, video stream. So you have here this device. It's an IoT device, and I plugged in a resistor, which is this thing. And here I have connected two wires from an oscilloscope. This oscilloscope, the setup costs something like $40. Okay, so this is around 4,000 rupee. Okay. So now, let's start a virtual machine in which I have here, okay, a Linux system. And now, well, this is open source scripts, which is called Chipskate. First, I have to initialize the scope. Okay. because this scope is super cheap, so I have to reprogram it every time I want to use it. Okay, it's initialized. Now I'm going to capture some traces. Okay. So what's happening here, you will see that it says input and output. So I'm just sending a message to the device, and it also replies the encrypted message. I have no clue of what is the key. I just send messages and reply. But at the same time, I was also capturing the power measurements. So at the same time, okay, let's open the first one and see what happens. So this is what happened. Let's make it bigger so that you can see it. You will see that here, this pattern, you have some blobs. And these blobs, actually, if you're familiar with crypto implementations, AES does 10 rounds. So if you start counting this blob, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is the power consumption while AES is running. And I have also connected one to the LED, because I can, even with the LED, say where it is happening. Okay? This is common for IoT devices to blink LEDs when they are busy. So, okay, I have AES, and I have power measurements, and I have the input and output. So let's run the attack. Okay, so this toolkit is known as Julia SCA. This is actually open source. It's made by one of my colleagues at Riscure. And here, what's going to happen is as follows. Here, it's going to take a look at the traces. It's going to take a look at all these messages. It's going to compute something called correlation power attack. You don't really need to know how it works. It's just a mathematical comparison. And yeah, so what happened here? Yeah, 13 seconds. And that's the AES key. So it is really that easy. There is no magic here. It's just click and break. Oh, but I have AES 256, military-grade crypto. Breaks the same. So, OK. This is open source. I'm not having here any magic or any trick. This is how click and break, it works like that. And this is why I'm showing it live, so that you can see that nowadays it can be that easy. And unfortunately, it is that easy. So as a recap, what happened here is I found the AES key of this device. And if this is the same AES key for all devices, now I can forge messages, I can decrypt traffic, I can do malware, which is encrypted so the device does not know that this is illegal. Okay, so now I can basically break the whole system architecture. Takeaways for these sophisticated attacks. Nowadays, for entry-level security like IoT devices, this is very affordable. These full setups cost 4,000 rupees. And you will break most of IoT devices out there with this very, very simple equipment. Of course, if you have something like a hardware security module for passports, that doesn't break with this thing. Then you need professional tooling, like we have in the company. But for IoT stuff, everything is broken by such setups. And the second thing is, even if in this ideal world that you do AES and everything is fine, problems are much more persistent than they seem. So it is really hard to do everything right. But it is fair to say that already putting one password per device or using AES, it's already a step up. So if you do good practices, this makes scalability of attacks much harder. So as a wrap-up of the talk, is there any hope? Because I showed 2 attacks live, and you've seen what happens. So is there any hope for IoT? Well, I think this IoT doom pattern, this combination of time pressure, low budgets, and design trade-offs, this will chase us for a long time. Because it's really hard. So if you have bad security practices and hardware attacks, and internet-connected stuff, it typically leads to global scale attacks. But is it possible to do something now? Well, the answer is yes. You can already start applying the old school security things. Until IoT security is forced on all devices, you can start putting firewalls or networks, intrusion detection systems. You can also segment the networks. You can also look at systems as a holistic view. So where you plug some IoT device, don't look at just that segment of the network, look at everything, because you can escalate attacks. Okay? So if you want to learn more about IoT security, you can have some examples. For example, there is a thread group, which is an IoT connection program, which is quite okay, for security. You can look at the OWASP IoT project. You can read a book which is called Security Engineering by Ross Anderson. It's a really nice book. The second thing I want to have as a wrap-up is that perfect security does not exist, but good enough security does. And this is very important, because for me, the things that happen nowadays in IoT, this is old news. I've seen this same thing happening in smart cards, like banking cards, or in content protection, like your video stream things. So this 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they had exactly the same issues. But nowadays, I challenge anybody in the audience to break my banking card keys. I can tell you nobody will break them. Even if you have professional level equipment, it's extremely hard. So indeed, it is possible to have good security. How to reach that good level of security? Now, the first thing is, if you don't have security practices, please start with them. For example, put passwords, and not the same password for everything, but per device password. Or use proper crypto protocols. Don't try to roll your own crypto. Try to do something that is tried and tested and it works. Or if you have choices, don't use broken stuff. Don't use MD5. That is broken in days nowadays. Use something like SHA-256 or something sound. It takes the same for the IoT device. Okay? And if you don't know how these things work, take a good security training. Okay, so take a sound training that you take 2-3 days, and you look at all these issues in a thorough manner, and then you will learn how it works. Unfortunately, this is not enough. If you already are doing these things, you have to keep up your game, because then side channel attacks and fault injection attacks, this is the next step. Okay? So this you can do, for example, defacing coding to protect against this thing, hardware protections. There are many, many things you can do. And with this, I would like to finish my talk. So if there is any question, please ask.